let's talk about more of the commands in the draw panel and the modify panel on this home ribbon. So to do this, I think the easiest way is to just draw something. So let's say that we are designing the cheek plate for a loft block. So let's say that we know that we're using a, I don't know. Let's say we're using a 6-inch sheave for some reason. I'm going to create a circle first because that's going to be the thing that the entire unit is designed around. So I'm going to type D to give myself the diameter of a circle instead of the radius of a circle. Spacebar to accept that. Then type 6, which is going to give me 6 inches. And you'll notice that, like, when I first typed that in, I had no idea how big of the space was. And this is now establishing visually how big my space is. Let's say that this is also the outside edge of that sheave. Is it ever actually 6 inches? Seldom, but that's okay. Let's say that we also know that this sheave has a 3/8 bore. So I'm going to do a circle with a diameter of 3/8 of an inch. Okay. I'm going to just double check that really quick using my distance command. Is that what it's supposed to be? Yeah, it is. All right. So typically a cheek plate is going to be basically a square with the corners lopped off of it. So let's start by making a square that we know is going to be big enough. So let's say an 8x8 square. Oh, things are weird from last time. I fix it. 8x8 square. And I'm going to just place that smack dab in the middle here, like that. It's a great place to start with my sheave or cheek plates. So the first thing I want to do is to cut off the corners here. Now, why do we do that practically speaking? That's so you can get your fingers in there when you're trying to run cable through a sheave. So there's a couple of ways I could do it. I could just draw a line and, place it where I think it should go. And then I could just move this maybe. Maybe I can line it up to a particular location and then move it in a certain amount. So let's say that I want to move that in 3 inches. Let's say 3 inches. And then I can trim this and cut this off. So I might use this command here, trim. And that's just going to let me cut anywhere that there's an overhang or something like that. Conversely, if this is a little bit shy, for some reason, let's say that doesn't quite meet, I can start that trim command again. I can either do it by clicking up there or typing TR. I typically use the TR. And you can see that my cursor, next to it says select object to trim or shift select to extend. So there is an option to do that. Look at that. Lovely. So that's trim and extend. Useful. It's a little bit slow in my opinion because there is another command that I can use to do that exact same thing, and that is a chamfer. And it's a little bit hidden here. Let me see if I can find it. I don't usually do it this way. I usually just type it. I'll bet it. Oh, look at that. Chamfer. So the chamfer command is going to give me a nice clean corner where I can specify the distance of each edge or of each side that I'm cutting. So the first thing I want to do is specify distance, and I do that by typing D. And it says specify first chamfer distance. So since this is going to be a 45-degree angle, I'm going to say 3 inches and 3 inches is the default. And then I select the lines, and there we go. We've chamfered it. It's beautiful. Look at that. Lovely. We love it. Something you'll notice is that the chamfer stays part of the polyline. The other way that I did it, it doesn't stay part of the polyline. And I don't like that because I want the two things that are part of the same shape or describing the same object to be connected to each other. So I'm going to connect those together by joining them, which is another thing here in Modify that I have no idea where it is because I just type the word join. It's this one. That one's join. Anyway, so I type join and there we go. Now they are the same. Okay, let's say that we're also going to use, well, how do we typically attach these? Usually there's some angle iron involved. So let's say that we're going to do angle iron that's like an inch, 1 inch angle iron. So how do I figure out exactly where to put? So I'm going to bolt through a piece of angle iron through this plate that I'm designing right now. So how do I establish where that is? Well, I can put a line in there, like a guide. And because I want this thing to be really obvious that it's a guide, I might use a construction line or an XLINE. And this line can be horizontal, vertical, some kind of angle, bisetting, offset, whatever. I'm going to type H to do horizontal. And now I'm going to use a OSNAP extension to put it in a place that is going to be useful to me. So I want this to be at exactly 1 inch. So I'm just going to type 1 inch, and there it is, 1 inch from the place that I was extending from. Nice. So I want to put, let's say 3 bolt holes. Yeah, let's say 3 bolt holes. 1, 2, 3. In this section. So those bolts are going to be, I'm just arbitrarily deciding that they are 1/4 of an inch bolts that I'm going to use. So those need to be oversized by a 32nd of an inch at least. So I'm going to say a diameter, and then 1/32 more than 1/4 of an inch is 9 32nds. And I'm going to place those. And you'll notice that I tend to draw things out of place and then move them into place. So I'm going to put that there. I'm going to move it some known distance. Let's say that we want to go 1 inch in, and then I want to go 1/2 inch up. Great. So now that's centered on the place where my 1 inch angle iron is going to be. Great. There's a faster way to do that, and I'm going to show you. Show you how to do that using OSNAP filtering. No, point filtering. Okay, so I've started my move command. I've selected the center point of where I'm going to put this hole, and I'm going to hit shift and then right click, and then it's going to pop up this menu. And it's going to, if you look here, I've got point filters. So I can change which, or I can input the location for one of those at a time, which is actually kind of perfect. So now that I have the vertical here and, this might not be a great example. It's okay, we're going to go with it. So let's say that I know that my vertical is this, but that my XY wants to be here. Now you can see that my extensions are actually kind of doing that for me already, but but they're doing it relative to themselves rather than relative to this other corner. And I really want this to be positioned relative to the corner. So I'm going to type in .x, which is going to give me the left-right coordinate. Yeah, no, this is a bad example of this. Oh, that is actually, in fact, not how I would do this. I would just mirror this. We'll come back to point filtering later. And I want to do another one that is at exactly the center point. So I'm going to do my base point based on the horizontal line so that I can go to the OSNAP when I do the copy. Look at that. Okay. Typically, a cheek plate is also going to have some keepers here. Let's say that those keepers have an outside diameter of 1/2 inch and an inside diameter of, is that 1/2 inch? I think it's 1/2 inch. And an inside diameter of 1/4 of an inch. Are they actually 1/4 of an inch? No, they're not. They're going to be a little bit bigger. So actually, I'm going to copy that. Drop that right there. Get rid of this one that's too small. So these want to be as close as possible and in line with this thing as possible. So right there, and then I'm just going to move them a little bit, like 1/16 of an inch. Honestly, I would probably do even less than that in real life. Okay, so now instead of just doing that 3 or 4 times, I'm actually going to rotate this, specify a base point in the center, hit copy. Oh, why didn't it let me do it multiple times? I forgot to copy. So anyway, there's different ways to do things. I could also do this with a mirror command, where I take this one, I say mirror it. I say this is the center point of that mirror line, and then I click here. Erase source object, no. I could do it again. The other way to do it that is probably might be faster depending on what the application is here. The other way to do it is using something called a polar array. So let's talk about arrays really quick. Let's say that I want to do a whole bunch of these. I could array them, and it's just going to give me a duplication of a bunch of them. So it's going to put a bunch of things, a bunch of columns and rows, just a series of columns and rows. And then I can adjust those columns and rows based on that original thing, or relative to that original thing. I can also do, let me Control Z out of that. I can also do what's called a polar array, that I start by typing array and then selecting array polar. So I want to select both of these objects, hit enter or space bar, then I'm going to select the center point of the array, and you'll notice that it drops in some arbitrary number of these. I think by default it's 6. So I'm going to change that. I'm going to say I only want 3 of them. And then the angle between the 3 that I want is 90 degrees. And there we have the exact same thing that we had but moments ago, without me having to start a command a couple of different times. Lovely. Now that I'm done with this, I think I can get rid of it. TBH, one of these should also be down here. I'm just going to ignore that fact for the purposes of this video. And there we go. I don't actually need this outside circle because the thing that I need is those holes. So I'm going to make this stop being an array. And to do that, I'm going to type explode and delete those 3 extras. And now I have everything that I need to make this cheek plate. I'm going to get rid of the guides. Boom. There we go. There we have the drawing of a cheek plate. Let's say that I want to be a little bit fancy and I don't like having hard edges on anything that I do. I can do what's called a fillet, which is essentially the same thing as a chamfer, except instead of doing squared off corners and we're doing a specific measurement, we're going to do a radius so that it's kind of it's an arc around those curves. So I'm going to select the halves of the object, and oh, I didn't have a radius set already. My radius, by default, it looks like 2 inches. 2 inches actually sounds really lovely for this, but for the sake of this, let's change the radius to 1 inch. And I can click there and do that. Let's do that on multiple. So I can do multiple by typing M, then spacebar. And it keeps the tool engaged while I do that. Cool. Oh, do you ever actually make cheek plates like this? No, ain't nobody got time to do those fillets, but it's fine. Cool. All right, I hope that was helpful. If you have questions, let me know. This has been some fun practice. Bye.